I'd give that like about a 6. Say, Tachibana, you want to show her how it's done? Yeah, no, that's a meme. Our new series opened like all good shows should, with a delightful wedding between an apprehensive bride and this dude. Hey lady, just be glad that you're not in a Toshiki Inoue show, otherwise you might end up with a hubby like this, and then somehow end up in an overcomplicated love triangle. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon. This certified wedding crasher was actually a red Sentai of this show named Taya Hando, get it? Tire and Handle? Well, he and his buddy Isho Meta ran a courier service and had been hired by the boyfriend to the bride named Mira Shifto, god these names, to rescue her from a wedding that she obviously wanted no part in. And I almost instantly really liked this red. That was a good quote. Anyway, while they seemingly only needed to deal with Tsuyoshi Jr. here at first, the villain faction of the season took almost no time in wanting to introduce themselves.
I wonder what Pokemon it is.
Yep, their main support here, named Boonboomger, was actually played by Rika Matsumoto, best known for playing a certain Pokemon master who took a long time to get there, as well as briefly Akiba Yellow. Ever mention how much I love Super Sentai? Speaking of which, the villains were a couple, with the female Hashian being named Itasha, who, if she had a vehicle form, I'm just gonna assume would be decorated with a bunch of magical girls. Meanwhile, her boyfriend, Deco Torade, would probably be decorated by countless swords. However, before we could get any significant lore and character building, something else took far more priority. You say the show kind of takes after Car Ranger, huh? Anyway, they managed to narrowly escape from the baddies who wanted Mira's wedding dress with a maneuver far more impressive than anything we'll get out of Wonderful Pretty-Cure this year. Yeah, look, I don't care how dangerous or impractical it is, I want one! We also briefly saw a dude in a yellow jacket eating a yellow lollipop. Huh, I wonder if this show is trying to tell us something. Anyway, to help Mira get into something more comfortable, Taya just bought a whole store for her. Okay, are we sure the show was at least partially ghostwritten by Inoue? I mean, Taya isn't a total putz like Tara was, but he is also giving out some of that needless Chad energy. But yeah, not only was he legit really damn generous, he was also kind of sensitive to the fact that Mira didn't seem to want to get rid of her dress that he had kind of callously said that they should just throw away. We would later learn that this was actually her grandmother's wedding dress that she had chosen just to give herself a little more control in her life. Thus, Taya decided to give her a little alone time to figure things out, and she did eventually change and was going to take the dress with them, but... Okay, Fate, you don't have to go this far, you just have to ask Nanoha that you want to be the bride. So they created the first monster of the week for the show called the Groomer, which is supposed to be like car in Japanese and not something else that might get us demonetized. My, what a progressive Sentai we have here. Anyway, the villain's objective was to gather everyone's fears and, I guess, work to revive Lord Piero. Yeah, they didn't really explain, though this is a fairly typical villain plot for the Sentai, though at least their grunts named the Nejieta look really damn cool. Like, normally, you wouldn't think that Gears could actually look all that intimidating, like Baranoia didn't really pull it off, but these guys kind of do it with their very monstrous faces and ripped up thug jackets. Like, these mooks have some good drip. That said, and while I think I've kind of been in the minority on this, I actually think the Sentai suits here look just as good. I don't know, I just really like the motif of a racer who would prioritize practicality and being form-fitting than anything else. Oh, but the tire helmet just looked too silly. Yeah, have y'all kind of forgot what you're watching? I'm actually more bothered by the tires on their backs that actually do feel incredibly superfluous. I mean, I get that it's part of the vehicle docking sequence, but even then, it doesn't feel all that necessary. Though the ones near their feet did make sense to symbolize acceleration, or should I say, drive. Yeah, Taya's first fight was very Drive-esque, which I have absolutely no problem with, as I'm also a fan of the police rider, and I liked how his fighting style utilized all of the modes of the Boom Boom handle to signify how he's supposed to be the balanced member of this team. Oh wait, this is supposed to be like a team show, right? But Taya only really has Ishiro as an ally, and Sentai is supposed to have at least 3 members. See? It could totally work out fine. But yeah, Mira decided to join the team, which Taya was more than willing to comply with, while Ishiro was a little against it because we gotta set up this trope for the next episode. But hey, good for you, Mira. Now, could you not smile like that so much? You're starting to creep me out. Anyway, after the requisite roll call, which of course Super Sentai has to poke fun of every time since Akiba Ranger, we got to see everyone's fighting style, with Taya, as mentioned, being the balance, while Ishiro and Mira more specialized with the gun and sword modes respectively. Good way of breaking up the action, especially with Taya having done most of the fighting in this episode, and they finished off the monster, seemingly, but... Yarkar, the sentient card that the Hashon had written and could also shrink down into a prop, suddenly went berserk, much to even their surprise. It absorbed the gas that the monster had released and was regurgitated into a giant monster.
That makes sense to me.
Thus, the Boonboomger had to chase it, and why is that kind of a theme this season? Well, anyway, the first part of the mech fight of this week took place on what I can only really describe as the space bridge from Transformers Prime, with them even being led by their version of Optimus, who again sounds like he just wants to catch them all. Eventually, it became a proper mech fight once Yarkar released the enlarged monster, and the Boonboomger formed their mech. And well, at least it looks better than the toy. Yeah, and while it is unique, I can't say I'm a huge fan of the transforming gimmick of this Sentai mech, as it makes it so that 95% of it is just the Boom Boom trailer, with all of the other vehicles just becoming armaments for it. That said, I do kind of like how with the transformation sequence of the armaments, they actually need to reverse into the trailer. That's a nice little touch, as is the platforms becoming a cape, which again does look a lot better than how the toy does it. So, after looking both ways before crossing, and then proceeding to make a ton of debris fly that's probably gonna cause a lot more accidents, we got a pretty fun first mech fight where the Boonboomger used all the weapons they had available, which at first I thought this was a drill, but no, it's actually a freaking screwdriver. And it was meant to work with Mia's claw arm to create the infrastructure for a wedding cake that they happily sliced into, again with a freaking screwdriver, which I'm pretty sure that's just going to make a very messy slice. By the way, while we obviously can't play it here, the insert song they played that's also going to be the show's opening was absolutely amazing in this scene. I mean, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise, as it was sung by Masaki Endo, which if you've never heard of him, or at least a few of his songs, well, I just pity you. We'll talk more about it next time when we do get the actual opening, but for now, the episode ended with Mira turning down eloping with her boyfriend as she decided to become a superheroine. All too common a story for most relationships. While this might be a little cliche to say, I think this show came right out of the gates at full speed with an impressive little start. It did everything a first episode should do, and a little more, including introducing us to most of our cast and establishing the rules and themes of the show, all within a very digestible and entertaining little package. Ironically, for a show like this, it didn't feel all that rushed, and did leave things a little open for some developments later. Some had thought this was going to be more of a parody Sentai season like Car Ranger, just because they have cars, and that this is coming after a more serious season like King Oger. And while there were elements of that here, and while I wouldn't have been totally against that choice, I am also glad that they at least didn't make the characters themselves total parodies. I'm already really liking Taya as the red lead who pays attention to the needs of others and will do anything to help them, whilst also encouraging them to try and take the reins or handles of their own lives. He's just a really nice guy who can fight like Shinosuke Tomari, so what's there not to like? Though, I would say the actual main character, at least of this episode, was their new teammate, Mira, who did go through a very nice little arc of deciding to take Taya's advice and take proper control of her own life. She already did kind of do it by at least choosing to wear her grandmother's wedding dress, and eventually take it back when it was turned into a monster. These characters are just pretty down to earth, which after, and as good as King Oger was, I think I kind of prefer to see this. Now, obviously, Ichiro didn't do much here, acting more as the HQ, but the next episode preview is showing that he's going to be the spotlight character of the second episode, so there's no real issue there. The action was pretty great too, with a lot of focus being placed on the speed and movement of the Boonboomger, and effectively getting across their different fighting styles. Meanwhile, the music, along with Masaki Endo, was great. I actually really liked the tunes that played during the space bridge chase, which sounded appropriately intense and exciting when needed. And overall, this was a great first episode for this new Sentai. They effectively introduced most of our main characters, and just a little bit of the villains, and the intrigue they might bring, with Yarkar seeming to be a bit of a wild card. I will say, it does feel like a bit of a back to basics Sentai, with nothing too complicated so far, but after a couple of series with some pretty complex world building, and as a first for this channel, I think we're off to a great start. Hope you all enjoyed our first ever Sentai review, where we tried a few new editing techniques to avoid those copyright claims. Obviously, you ended up seeing a little bit more of my face, which was probably the biggest con, but at the same time, I do like being a little more personal with these videos in order to really get my thoughts across. Look forward to more of these videos with their very sloppy edits in the near future, and until next time though, for now my friends, and yeah, I'll be sure to get the right changer next week, hopefully.